Americans taken hostage overseas are more than twice as likely as other Western hostages to remain in captivity, to die in captivity, or be murdered by their captors, according to a report this year from the group New America. Many of them journalists. New Hampshire native James Foley was working as a freelance war correspondent for Global Post and AFP in northern Syria when he was kidnapped in November of 2012, and as you know, nearly 2 years later, publicly executed by members of ISIS. I'm joined now by James' parents, Diane and John Foley. Since their son's death, they've established the James W. Foley Legacy Foundation with the aim of protecting journalists and other Americans working internationally. It's good to see you both again. Thanks for being here. I want to start with that. In these 3 years, you've advocated relentlessly, you've raised money to make sure the world was a safer place, or let's put it this way, a less unsafe place for people like your son. Have we made progress? Have you made progress?
I think the world is as dangerous as it has ever been, Jim. It's, I think Westerners are targeted in many cases, and particularly Westerners who go out as journalists or humanitarian workers, tourists or educators. It can happen to anybody, really.
You know, I want to talk about the government role in this, particularly our government, in a couple of seconds. But journalists have banded together. I know there are organizations that have come up alive, by the way, particularly since your son's death, that have tried to figure out codes of conduct and how they can help each other. Has that gotten anywhere, or is that just sort of at the rhetorical stage?
Go ahead, Diane.
Go ahead, Diane.
Well, there is now a new international coalition called the Alliance for a Culture of Safety, which is exciting because for the first time we have media companies working together with journalists, NGOs, and the very vulnerable freelance journalists to help create this culture of safety. But it's ongoing. I mean, we have many challenges, such as access to expensive hostile environment and first aid training. Staffers get it all the time. But
well, and government policy, too, which I want to talk about. For those who don't remember, this government did try to rescue your son, obviously unsuccessfully. We had a policy and still have a policy of paying no ransom. My understanding is when you met with government officials and said, well, we're going to try to raise money, as virtually every Western European nation itself will do, other than the UK, you were threatened with prosecution? Is that true? By our government?
Yeah.
If you raised money, what was your reaction to that?
We were horrified. We didn't really believe that that was the case because we had done research before putting ourselves in that situation, and we knew that that families or persons under duress attempting to bring a family member home wouldn't be prosecuted. I think the important governmental issue was that we weren't transferring money to terrorist groups.
But the threat was there. I mean, while you had a rational response, the threat was there, was it not?
Yeah, I don't think that particular individual was attempting to really help us at this point. They were attempting to.
It was rather adversarial at that point.
With our government.
Yes, but since then, you know, after that, you know, in 2015, we had the hostage review, new presidential directive, and we have an interagency fusion cell. And, however, we do not have the presidential envoy for hostages has been vacant.
I know you were lobbying in Washington. I wanted to stay on this just for a second, though. The new policy as of 2015, while our government says there will be no more threats of prosecution if individuals attempt to raise money, there's still no ransom payments, correct, allowed by this government. Is that correct?
Our government will not pay ransom.
And there is, the other plus, is, as you say, is there's better interagency communication. But this position, this special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, which was created as part of this, who is the person who's supposed to make these things happen, one of the vacancies that have not been filled by this administration.
Exactly.
And the real key, Jim, is, in my mind, is that, you know, after 9/11, we mandated that we would not negotiate with terrorists. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean we won't communicate. Communication is not necessarily appeasement or acquiescence. The point is if we don't communicate with a captor, we have no way of understanding what that person or group of people might want.
But the backdrop for this, and I don't mean to cause more pain than you already have, Western European nations, other than the UK, which do pay ransoms, almost without exception, get their captives who are their citizens released. And captives from the UK and the United States, like your son, do not only not get released, but are often executed. And one of the things that I read in your trip to Washington about advocating for this envoy thing, we don't even know how many hostages there are. I think you said you believe there were somewhere from 17 to 20. Well, some government sources are saying there could be more than 100.
Oh, we think there's probably at a minimum of 100 Americans taken captive annually. But we know of 18 public cases that are on our website right now. We have 18 Americans. 2 of them are young children, ages 2 and 5, Caitlin Coleman's children, born in captivity.
But do we have we as the people of America, I don't mean the families involved, obviously, have the level of information that you think a transparent government should be providing?
Well, that's one of the problems, Jim. This is a silent crisis because a lot of the captive people who are held in captivity are asking for silence because they're being told by our government, that the FBI, that the going public could injure the.
That's a decision you faced,
right?
And you decided not to.
We decided not to.
Do you think
absolutely not?
You do
not. We had no choice. We knew nothing, and obviously we increased Jim's value. But the point is that there isn't. We need more information to understand what's actually happening, and we need more involvement of our countrymen.
Do you think your son would be alive had you been able to raise money, and had there been the level of communication between our government and Turkey?
Absolutely.
You do?
Early on, I think so. I think it changed after that.
You know, one of the horrors, I think, and I can't ever put myself in a place like yours, but I will for a split second, is everybody watching the show knows how your son died, but so few know how your son lived. Can you spend the last 60 seconds just telling us a little bit about Jim and his work?
Jim was an educator, a humanitarian, and a freelance conflict journalist. He loved to tell people stories. He liked to listen and share them. And he really felt the work he was doing in the Middle East was vital, that we know what is happening there, the suffering.
A couple of seconds about your son?
No, I mean, I think Diane captured it pretty well. One of his quotes was, everybody has a story. And he was a wonderful listener, Jim, and it was his gift. He gave himself to whoever he was listening to.
Well, I wish I'd known him, but I feel in some ways I know him through your work, and we really appreciate it so much. And we're going to tell people about your run in a second. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you
for having us.
Good luck with everything.
Thank
you. The annual James Foley Freedom Run Walk, it's a 5K, is next Saturday. It's October 14th in Rochester, New Hampshire, but people can participate from anywhere in the world virtually. You can find more information online at foleyrun.org, and for more information on the organization itself, please visit jamesfoleyfoundation.org.